My name is Ricardo, and the worst 3 months of my career were spent guarding the old St. Jude's Hospital Annex. It had been closed for 10 years, slated for demolition, and my job was simply to deter vandals and make sure the place didn't burn down. The pay was good, but the atmosphere was a heavy, constant dread. The building wasn't just old, it felt sick. The first few nights were just dust and silence. But silence in an abandoned hospital is never total. There were always the creaks of old pipes, the faint hum of residual electricity, and most disturbingly, the constant presence of the smell of antiseptic and decay, even after a decade. My patrol route included the pediatric wing on the 4th floor. Nobody liked going up there. The floor was covered in dust, but sometimes, very faintly, you could see small, fresh streaks in the dust. Not footprints, but tiny, almost imperceptible lines. On my second week, during the 3 a.m. patrol, I was halfway down the children's ward corridor. My flashlight caught something on the wall. Scrawled right above the faint outline of a child's bed, where the paint had peeled, was a single word, freshly written in what looked like charcoal: leave. I immediately radioed my partner, who was stationed in the lobby. He assured me I was the only person in the building outside of him. The windows were secured, and the only functioning elevator required my key. I checked the word closely. It wasn't there during my 1 a.m. round. Someone or something was moving inside the annex, writing warnings. The next night, I was back on the 4th floor, flashlight shaking slightly. I found the word had been rubbed out, but new activity had started. The old rusty toy box in the corner was open. It was always closed. As I walked past, I heard the faintest sound of marbles rolling on the tiled floor, coming from inside the box. I stopped, heart hammering. The air pressure was totally still. Nothing should have been moving. I stood there for maybe 3 minutes, listening to the ghostly, tiny sounds of the marbles rolling back and forth inside the box. I pointed my flashlight directly into the box. It was empty. The sound immediately stopped. That's when I noticed the dust pattern on the floor again. This time, right in the center of the dusty corridor, there was a series of small, perfect child-sized handprints leading directly from the toy box towards the nurse's station. They were too small to be mine, and they were imprinted over the dust, not through it, as if pressed by weight. I didn't try to rationalize it this time. I ran. I bolted the 4th floor stairwell door shut and never returned above the 3rd floor for the rest of my time there. When I quit, I never told the replacement guard about the 4th floor. All I know is that St. Jude's wasn't just abandoned. It was holding on to its patients, and they did not appreciate the company. I spent a decade as a search and rescue volunteer in Northern California. You learn quickly that people get lost for 3 reasons: poor planning, bad weather, or injury. We found 99% of our subjects. But there's always that 1%. The cases that make no sense. The cases that stick with you. One of those was the disappearance of a man named Mark, a seasoned solo hiker who vanished from his campsite on a perfectly clear night in late September. This case violated every rule of how a person should get lost. The call came in at dawn. We found Mark's campsite quickly. It was near a small, well-marked stream. Everything was exactly where it should be. His tent was zipped up, his sleeping bag was rolled out, his cooking equipment was neatly packed away, and his car was parked safely at the trailhead. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, and no evidence of animal activity. The only thing missing was Mark. We started a standard grid search around the campsite. We found his glasses sitting neatly on the picnic table, beside a half-finished book. We found his wallet and keys inside a dry sack hanging from a tree branch, exactly where an experienced hiker would keep them. The initial perimeter search found nothing. The strangeness began on day 2. Our tracking dogs, which are infallible in the scent of a fresh subject, reached the edge of the campsite and acted bizarrely. They didn't howl or strain on the leash. They simply became terrified. They tucked their tails, whimpered, and refused to cross an invisible boundary just 20 feet from Mark's tent. It was as if the human scent, or perhaps any scent, simply stopped there. On day 3, the team expanded the search far beyond the campsite. We discovered something highly unusual about 300 yards away, deep in a cluster of dense, unbroken pine trees. A single heavy hiking boot belonging to Mark was placed in the center of a small clearing. It was clean, undamaged, and resting upright, as if someone had set it down gently. It wasn't scuffed or torn, suggesting he hadn't lost it in a fall. How does a seasoned hiker lose one boot 300 yards away to his fully stocked camp in the middle of a dense forest? And why only one? The most disturbing piece of evidence was found by a helicopter team on day 5. High above the campsite, they spotted what looked like a pattern. The tents and gear were arranged around a strangely perfect, smooth circle in the grass. A circle about 40 feet in diameter. It was subtle, but the vegetation inside the circle was slightly different, slightly shorter than the brush around it. When we studied the aerial photographs, we realized that Mark had set his camp directly in the center of a clearing that was almost perfectly circular. It looked like the place had been used as a focal point for something much larger and older than the campsite itself. We never found Mark. We never found the second boot. I left search and rescue a year after that case because I couldn't shake the image of that perfectly ordered campsite and that terrifying silence. Mark didn't panic and run. He didn't fall. He didn't struggle with an animal. It was as if, in the dead of the night, something had simply reached down into that strange, silent circle and plucked him out without leaving a trace.